I am fantasy and paranormal romance author Leslye Penelope, and welcome to My Imaginary Friends, a look behind the scenes of an author mapping the worlds in my head and making them a reality. Hello, friends. Today is Sunday, September 22nd, 2024, and this is episode 246 of My Imaginary Friends. I'm Leslye. We are recording live again on YouTube, just because that seems to be an easy way to make this actually happen. Just as a reminder, you can sign up for the Footnotes newsletter, which includes the show notes for each episode, as well as inspiration, strategies, and ideas to help you grow as a writer and as a creative. That's at myimaginaryfriends.net/footnotes. When you sign up, you can choose to become an imaginary best friend for a few dollars a month and get access to my premium posts, long-form craft essays, as well as discounts on my courses and coaching. So please join me there. This week's best thing is that I started finally drafting a new novel. It is September. The writing that I've done this week, as I believe I've mentioned before, has been a short story for an anthology that's coming out next year and some sample chapters for this novel. But I've finally started actually writing it. I felt kind of bereft, not working on writing words for most of the year because I was plotting. I was trying to sell this book. I have good news about that, although I'm not sure how much I can share, but I'll just say that it's good news and I'll just leave it at that. And I'm actually writing the book, so that should tell you all that you need to know. And it's the book. The old title is The Book of Secrets. I'm still trying to find a new title. I've been brainstorming for the past couple of weeks. I don't like to write a book that doesn't have a title. And usually the titles I pick at the beginning stick. Like, I did not write Song of Blood and Stone with a title. That took a long time, my first novel, to actually figure it out. I brainstormed over 150 title possibilities. The other ones came a little bit more easily once I had that title sort of formula, the pattern, Song of Blood and Stone, Whispers of Shadow and Flame. I was just making lists of sound words and then the nouns, I think they're all nouns, of things that apply to the story. And those titles all came together. Monsters We Defy was originally called I wanted to call it The Monsters We Defy. And then I went away from that because I was scared that was too highbrow, too poetic, because it's from a poem. And then I went back to it. Daughter of the Merciful Deep is the only book that I didn't title myself, and we have talked about that in a previous episode of a podcast. But the title that I had for it originally, I had from the beginning, close to the beginning, and I kept it all the way through the writing process. Somehow having a title when I'm writing focuses me. So I would love to be able to find a new title for this book soon. And so I have been brainstorming titles with the new direction. So an overview of how to get to the actual drafting point in time. Like, there's a question that I get when I do workshops and talk to writers is like, how do you know when you're ready to start writing? And I had to get to the point when I was actually ready to start writing. And there's lots of different answers to that question because everyone is different, of course. So to recap, I did my proposal. This is my option book. So I put together a synopsis and the first 3 sample chapters, got feedback from my editor on that, and had to kind of go back to the drawing board a little bit because the feedback boils down to a lot of these things are too complicated. And I agreed with that feedback. So I went back to the drawing board, went back to the core of the idea, the inspiration behind it. And since this is a book that I've been working on for many, many years, I've had in my head for like 9-ish years, it was hard because it's gone through so many iterations. And so going back to the core of the story, what I wanted to say, what about the idea is really interesting to me, and then simplifying it. So kind of taking it back to its component parts. These are the things in the story that I do not want to lose. So I looked at my editor's feedback, and there were some things in there that, she was saying that were things I didn't want to lose, but I was okay losing some of the other things that had come about when I overcomplicated it trying to explain some of the world building things. And also I tend to overcomplicate, like when I'm interested in something, I want to put it in the book. And it doesn't always belong in the book. And I recognize that. Often it takes someone else to tell me before I actually accept it and recognize it completely. But I did accept my editor's feedback and I thought, yes, this book is too complicated. So it was really just how do I simplify it and make sure it's a story that I want to tell and that it still respects the core idea. So the pitch hasn't changed. The elevator pitch is the same. Those are the pieces that I wanted to keep. The elevator pitch for this book is a young woman sees her teenage sister being hustled into a car with a stranger and driving away, being kidnapped essentially. The next day, no one remembers that the sister exists, not even their mother. And that's the core elevator pitch. That's the story I want to tell. The complicating factors are, okay, what happens? Why? Why does no one remember that? How does the magic system, um, like what is the magic system? What is the thing that makes people be able to take someone out of everyone else's memories and out of reality to a certain degree? There's a lot more in the story than that. But like if I boil it down, like that's what I wanted. There were several other things that I listed out that were just non-negotiables. Like this is why I want to write this book. If I don't have these things, then I'm not interested in writing the book anymore. So I really focused on those. And then, okay, what is the simplest way I can tell this story? What is the simplest way to get from point A to point Z at the end? I had also pitched it originally as a duology, and I got feedback that it should be like one book with like a potential for another book in the same world with the same characters, but like complete the story in one book. And so that was a big challenge because I had all these ideas for a book too that were incredibly complicated as well. And there was lots of brainstorming, lots of talking it out with people who have been hearing about this book. Some for like just this year that I've been working on it, or my brother, he's been hearing about this book for many years. Well, my friends have been hearing about it for years because off and on. I actually, if you're a long time podcast listener, I'm pretty sure I talked about this at one point in the past few years. When I was going to self-publish this book, I got a cover made. And it was a suggestion from a friend. It's like, oh, because I had been struggling with it. And she was like, oh, well, sometimes what helps me is to actually just buy a cover. And that sort of focuses you and can hone, like, you can just say, yeah, focus down on this book is coming out. I already paid money for a cover. So I don't know, 7 or 8 years ago. Sorry, that was my timer going off. 7 or 8 years ago, I paid for a cover. It's gorgeous. It's beautiful. It's the same designer who does all the Savage City books, who did the original Earthsinger Chronicles when they were self-published. He's a fabulous designer, Bookfly Studios. And I still love it. I think I'm just going to have to figure out how else I can use it since this is now going to be traditionally published with a different title. And, like obviously that's just not going to work. So yeah, I've had many iterations of the story. And even in the past year, it's gone through a lot of iterations, a lot of ideas, a lot of different ways that it could go. But latest version, simple version. I went on a writing retreat 2 weeks ago with some writer friends. We were at the Highlights Retreat Center in central Pennsylvania, about an hour from Scranton. We had done an author signing in Wilkes-Barre, which is like an hour away from that. And so I was like, oh, we're going to be up there. We're going to drive for several hours into Pennsylvania. Might as well go to this writing retreat. So my focus at the writing retreat was getting this plot together, this new, hopefully final version of the plot. We made a run to Staples to get some office supplies beforehand. So I got one of those big presentation boards that opens into like 3 parts. So like a big part in the middle and then 2 half parts on the side, which is perfect for a 3-act structure. Because Act 1, then you have Act 2, which is often split into 2 parts, Act 2, Part 1, Act 2, Part 2, or Part A and Part B, and then Act 3. And so I was using sticky notes, and I think I have a photo. I'll see if I have a photo to share in the show notes of the beginnings of my plot board. That was really helpful, getting it laid out visually, trying to figure out what scenes I needed, going through the same process as always, because I had the core, and it's just like, how am I going to tell the story? It started to get a little bit spirally, starting to get more complicated as I was doing that. So I paused and I was like, no, we need to keep it simpler. My aha moment came, I think it was the idea of the sticky notes, even though I didn't really rearrange them that much. I knew that I wanted to have a few different time periods that were like timelines. So we have the story takes place in 1999, the main story. And then I was playing around with the idea of a past story, talking about sort of the origin of the powers, but I hadn't committed to that because it seemed complicated and it will require a good deal of research. And I was feeling lazy, but the book requires the research, so I'm going to have to do it. Uh, and then, so the aha moment came when I really committed to the sort of multiple timelines, moving around in time. So I had laid out the story on my plot board with my sticky notes, and I got past the midpoint. I think I got mostly to the end of Act 2. So the all is lost moment when everything falls apart. And I knew that Act 3 is always a little muddled. I don't really worry too much about it until I actually start writing. And the things I had were fine. There was tension, there was conflict. Um, it was interesting, but it was just like things happening. It was just a sequence of events. A character is searching for her sister, trying to solve this mystery. What happened to her? And there was, there was no blood on the page. There was no emotional core. I was having a hard time finding it. I knew I was getting to know the character. I was doing the character profile early. I usually do that late. I did it before writing the first draft. Generally, I don't do a full character profile until after draft 1 because I learned so much about the character during the drafting process. But this character has been super slippery and she's changed so much. And I was sort of just molding her like clay into what I wanted her to be for whatever story I was telling. And that wasn't working really well. Um, some people have characters come to them fully formed, and some writers feel like they're channeling. Some writers feel like the characters are speaking to them and the characters are having a mind of their own. My characters generally don't come to me like that. It's a lot of manipulation. I'm definitely a puppeteer. And so there's different, for better or worse, I was puppeteering too much. And there is such a thing, even in the way that I write, as too much manipulation, where they're not even a character. They're just a person or a thing doing actions that I want them to do. I'm just moving pieces on the chessboard. So I didn't want it to be like that. But I was really struggling with how not to have that happen. And then the idea of telling the story out of order, using flashbacks, and not even flashbacks, but to a certain degree flashbacks, but having multiple timelines that are being woven together. And then I could take these series of actions and really show the motivation. So if I show you something, because I was like, I was always this whole time going to start at the beginning and move all the way to the end. And then I'm like, what if I started at the inciting incident, which was going to be at the, towards the middle of Act 1. But I was like, what if I moved my beginning there and then along the way tell you what happened before, show the relationships. And that just got my mind opened to a different way of telling the story. So sometimes, my first inclination, I generally write in order when I write a novel. I need to live through the emotions of the characters. So, I have to go from point A to B to C to D to feel what the characters are feeling so that I know how they'll react. And the idea of, so because I write in order, my natural inclination is to tell the story in order. And most of my stories are told in order. Sometimes some of them have flashbacks and some of them have, interstitials of different cuts, but I haven't really done anything that's published that is wildly out of order. I tried it with a book that has not come out, that needed to be, that was like my memento. Like I was like inspired by Memento, and there was a really good reason to tell that story wildly out of order, but it was very hard and I never got it done. So this is not Memento at all. It's not that film by the guy who did Batman, Christopher Nolan. But I'm doing a history, like a past timeline at the moment. Of course, I've only been drafting this for a week, but it feels really good to do this. And then starting later, starting with the inciting incident, and then kind of moving back and forth. So you see this thing that happened, we are brought into the past organically. Having those transitions between the present and the past is going to be really important, I think. Not something I'm super concerned about in my first draft, but I'm thinking about it to make sure that I can massage it to make it flow. So what that does, what that did for me for this particular story, is allow me to find that emotional core for the character and allow me to sink deeper into the character in a way that it's kind of difficult to explain how that works. But when I was just telling the story in order, and it just felt like, she's going here, she's doing this, she's finding this, she's learning that. That's hard. The obstacle comes, she overcomes it, she doesn't, she fails, she succeeds. It was just things happening. By telling it out of order, by starting with this very emotional event, this kidnapping scene, and then where do I go from there? What is the next thing that you need to know? Because you're going to be a little confused. Um, Hopefully in a good way, like in a way that you're intrigued, maybe not confused, ideally, but like intrigued. Like, I want to know more. I want to understand what's happening here. Like, why is this reaction the way it is? And then we're revealing things. It allowed me, telling it in a different order allows me to have reveals, and having these reveals allows me to dig into the character motivation, the emotion, and the relationships in a way that I wasn't seeing how I could easily do when I was telling the story in order. So hopefully that makes sense. Um, and it just freed me. It's a more complicated way to tell a story, but I think it's going to be a little bit more interesting. Um, and you'll see something in the present of the timeline, and then hopefully go back and see why it's important, where it came from, and then we'll move forward with the mystery, the investigation aspect of it as we are learning the characters, learning about the relationships, and really diving into why things are happening. So all of that is the process that I've been going through. Also, still looking for a new title for this. Um, the other piece of this is that one of my characters has sickle cell. And so I'm going to want to find some people to talk to interview people who have sickle cell or people with loved ones with sickle cell. So if you fit that description, please reach out. You can email me on my website or at hello@lpenelope.com, because that is something that I would want to be doing in the very near future. Um, yeah, so that is my writing update. That's how it's been going. I have about 7,500 words. My goal for the first draft is to do 10,000 words a week, write 5 days a week, minimum 2,000 words a day, which is very doable for me in terms of pacing, and get this first draft, fast draft of the manuscript done by the end of October. That's the goal. I believe in fast drafting, which means not editing at all, just writing the first draft as fast as possible, rarely even reading what I wrote before, definitely not doing any sort of edits beyond correcting typos, which I will do because I type very fast and very messy. And in order to help future Leslye be able to understand what present Leslye wrote, I do find it beneficial to at least correct the typos and make sure that there are real sentences there. But lots of gaps for things that I don't know, names, motivations, jobs, details that I'm going to have to research in between drafts 1 and draft 2. And that's how I get through the first draft. So yeah, I normally write 4 days a week. I'm upping it to 5 so I can get this done in a timely manner. And then the next goal after that will be to get a clean draft by the end of the year. That will give me 2 months. Might be a little aggressive, because I feel like sometimes I might need 3. It just depends how long it ends up being. But I would love to get a completed second draft out and then to my agent to take a look at before the end of the year. So I have a schedule of sorts. I have my writing goals all detailed, and I'm excited. I have a lot of energy behind the project. I'm excited to write it. The research is a little daunting, as it always is, but it's part of it, and I think it'll be fun to discover more about all the topics that I'm writing about. So since I'm setting it in 1999, I'll have to try to remember things, but also actually do real research. And because I can't just base it on my experience in 1999, I graduated from college, Howard University, And this story takes place on the West Coast. It would have been a little easier to set it in DC since I was actually there. But there are story reasons why I'm setting it on the West Coast. So research about that, research about, like I said, about sickle cell, about Y2K, the thing I'm basing my magic system on. I've been researching that a lot, and lots of other topics that come into play. So this will be ongoing. And so the core question of like, how do you know when you're ready to start writing? Coming back to that, I think that schedules, deadlines can dictate it. I'm looking at a deadline and working backwards and trying to see how long will it take me with some buffer time for, the holidays. I'm trying to write through the holidays, which may or may not be a reasonable thing to do. And through lots of travel this fall. But trying to do sort of an aggressive deadline just because I've been feeling this whole year like, oh, I just need to be writing. I need to be writing. Well, now I'm writing. Yay. How do you know when you're ready to start writing? When you feel like you have got a handle on the things you need to know. And really, it's such a personal decision. Like, I need a full outline, acts 1 and 2, pretty well defined, act 3, a general idea, knowing that so much is going to change, but I need to have some version of it that I'm working towards so that I can veer off of it. And then generally, when I get to the midpoint, I will re-plot the second half and keep going from there. And there's just sometimes you're just feeling pulled to write, especially, I can't speak to how pantsers work, but as a plotter and as a person who's been plotting, what it feels like 9 months. I mean, such a long time. And not just this book. I was working on 2 books this year, but still, there's a fatigue that sets in. And there's just like, I just need to, I don't have all the answers. I don't try to have all the answers before I start writing because I know I'm going to get so many of them. Even in writing the first 7,500 words that I did this week, I've gotten so many new ideas and answers and new questions that I couldn't have if I was just plotting, if I was just thinking things through in my head. The act of actually writing down words and they're not clean words, but I do try to write it out as opposed to doing a big outline or like a more advanced outline. I actually try to write prose because there's not a lot of description, but the little bit of description I have brings things to mind, asks questions, answers questions, lets me get to know the characters, writing the dialogue. How are they interacting? I might not have like dialogue tags or all of the, pretty polished prose things, but it's a very basic level of prose and it does so much. So I get to my skeleton, my outline, my synopsis. I have an 11-page synopsis that I'm working from. And once it felt clean, I went over it several times. It took a week to just keep going over it and being like, does this feel right? Sort of as I read through it, imagining the book taking shape in my mind, imagining the book as a movie playing in my mind, going through the synopsis. Is this entertaining? Does this tell the story I want? Oh, I've discovered some new details by doing that. And then I was like, okay, I think I'm good here. Like I could get feedback on it, but I need to start writing. So I decided to eschew another round of feedback because I've had a lot of feedback on this idea. And there's lots of questions that come from feedback that I don't have the answers to until I write the manuscript. So yeah, that's how I knew that I was ready to start writing it when I'd gone over the synopsis as much as I could. I didn't feel like there was anything else I wanted to change, and I didn't feel like I could. The questions that I still had, I felt like needed to be answered by drafting, by writing the manuscript. Alrighty. Updates, news. If you are a fan of my other podcast, Ink and Magic, the one I do with my friend Ines Johnson, season 2 is coming soon. We're going to start recording. We had a break for summer and travel. Inez was on some cross-country travel. She was on lots of different trips, as was I. But we are back. Well, I'm sort of back. I'm kind of, I will tell you my events in a moment. But we're going to be recording, so look out for season 2. If you have not listened to Ink and Magic and you are a fan of fantasy or paranormal romance, then search for that on your podcast player. We are going to be going into season 2 of Nalini Singh's Side Changing series, which is the book series we've been rereading, or now we're reading it for the first time because we never got to season 2 before. So that's fun. Also, events. I have a bunch. So I'm recording this on September 22nd. This episode comes out tomorrow, September 23rd, 2024. This week in Rockville, Maryland, Capclave, which is our local literary science fiction and fantasy con, I'll be appearing at on Friday and Saturday. Sunday, I'm at the Baltimore Book Festival, very briefly selling some books, I think at 2 o'clock. I'll be at World Fantasy in Niagara Falls in October. I will be teaching an online workshop on novel revision on October 24th. I'll be in Nashville, I think in October sometime, for the Southern Festival of Books. I will be in Las Vegas in November for Author Nation. And there's a public book signing on that Friday, I believe. It's on my website, lpenelope.com/calendar. I've been doing a world tour, or at least going to Niagara Falls, Nashville, and Las Vegas. And it's going to be crazy. Hey, library addict. Yay for progress in your book and yay for more ink and magic. Yes, I'm excited too. I've been missing it and I really want to get to season 2 of Side Changing and see what we have in store there. I haven't been reading a lot, although I was on a panel yesterday with Sarah Wendell from Smart Bitches and Kit Rocha. I was on Romantasy. It was for the Toronto Northern Hearts Conference, Toronto Romance Writers, I believe. Great panel. I don't know if you can see it if you missed the conference, but it was a lot of fun. And Sarah Wendell is a wealth of information for books. So she recommended a story by Stephanie Burgess, who I've read and liked before, and I immediately downloaded it. Currently reading A Marriage of Undead Convenience by Stephanie Burgess, which I'm in the middle of it. I'm having a great time. I recommend it so far. And she's great, so I trust her to stick the landing. And I'll be reading some other books for like research for comp purposes for the book currently titled Book of Secrets, searching for a new title. I will not rest. I will not feel completely comfortable until I have a new at least a new working title for me. Whether or not my publisher chooses to use that title is obviously out of my control. But I have a list so far of about 50 very bad titles. Still working on it. And yeah, that is, I think, it for now. Let's see, once again, just making another note, if you or someone you love has sickle cell, I am looking for people to talk to and interview about that. Feel free to contact me on my website. And I think that's all the news that is fit to print. Hopefully I will see you all soon. I'm hoping to get back into a regular schedule. I took on too many projects. As you can see if you go to my events page. Too many. It is like the theme of, I don't know when this started, my life, but like this year in particular and this season, these past few months. And I think I said somewhere, and I don't know, 2025 is going to be my year of no. And by year of no, I don't mean I'm not doing anything, because I've already agreed to a couple of things. I'm going to try to do one event per month, no more than that. So either online or in person. No more of this 2 events in one day, 15 events per month kind of life. It's exhausting. 1 event per month is my goal. I will try to have accountability partners to hold me accountable to that goal so that when I want to say yes, because I'm a person who likes saying yes, I will have support and encouragement to say no. Because there's a cost to saying yes. There's a cost to an hour-long podcast interview. There's a cost to, I can do that. I can appear here and do that. And I am feeling the effects of those costs. But it's been fun. I'm still looking forward to all the stuff I'm doing. It's just, since 2025, I don't have a book coming out at the moment. I might self-publish something. We'll see what happens. I was thinking of doing like a special edition of something since people seem to like those. I've got lots of thoughts. I do not have lots of energy. And Sterling looks like he's on the move. So that's it for me for this week. I hope that you have a wonderful week. I hope to talk to you soon. And happy reading, happy writing. For episode show notes and to sign up for the Fitness newsletter and get show notes in your inbox, go to myimaginaryfriends.net. Subscribe wherever you get your podcasts and watch the video episodes on YouTube. You can email me at podcast@lpenelope.com. I would really appreciate a rating and review to help support the show. And My Imaginary Friends is part of the Frolic Podcast Network. For more fantastic podcasts, go to frolic.media/podcast.